Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video. Today I have the honor to have Charles Hoskinson with me. Hello, Charles. Hello, Mr. Hoskinson. How are you today?
Very good. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure. Actually, my audience has been requesting your presence here for a very long time. We have been trying to reach you for a very long time. So we're very excited to talk about everything about Cardano. And if that's okay with you, we can jump into the first question, which is a little bit basic, but there is a lot of new people jumping into the market, and maybe a lot of people are hearing about Cardano for the first time. So my first question is, can you please explain why did you create Cardano and what does or will make it different from other blockchains? What problems does it solve, and what are the differentiative factors or values that it offers to the market?
Yeah, very concise, small question. Cardano is just a continuation of what's already been going on for over 10 years in the industry. When we first created Cardano, we were right at the edge of what's called the second generation cryptocurrencies. And so back in the beginning, there was Bitcoin. That was the first generation. And the problem that Bitcoin was just trying to solve was saying, could you create value that's decentralized and allow you to teleport it anywhere in the world, kind of like email for money? So we got gold, we got all these other things, but it's really expensive and time consuming to move it, and then there's custodial risk. So how do you create something that's like digital gold and teleport it around? So nobody knew if that was going to work or not. It took about 5 years for Bitcoin to really show that there's some merit to that. But the minute that they had it, then people said, hang on a second here, we really need it to be better. We need to do more. It's kind of like when the web browser came around. It was very static, and you could just have text. And then people said, well, no, we need a programming language. We need JavaScript, because then once we have that, we get Facebook and Amazon and YouTube and all these other experiences. Analogously, Bitcoin wasn't programmable. You really couldn't do much more than just move value around. So when Ethereum came about, it brought the idea of the smart contract. And there you could create dApps and DeFi and ICOs and all these cool things. And you could build all these beautiful applications. The problem that Ethereum has, and what we started working on back in 2015 with Cardano, is that there are three big issues. One, it doesn't scale. So that's why the transaction fees are so high, and there's all these issues right now. There's only so many people that can use the network at any given time by design. So you need to kind of upgrade it. And that's why F2 is coming, because the network isn't where it needs to be yet. Two, there are over 8,000 cryptocurrencies and all these legacy financial systems, and they don't talk to each other. There's no interoperability. Could you imagine Wi-Fi where your Wi-Fi was connected to your manufacturer, so your iPhone can only talk to an Apple Wi-Fi, or your Samsung phone can only talk to a Samsung? It would be terrible. Wi-Fi wouldn't work at all for anybody. And that's where we're at right now in the cryptocurrency space. We haven't had our Wi-Fi moment. Everything is kind of in its own silos. And then finally, we have this governance problem. Why does Bitcoin not evolve? Well, what happens is these systems get too big, and then they can't grow anymore, they can't evolve anymore, and they start breaking apart. That's why you have a Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and Ethereum Classic and all of these other projects. So we said, if we're going to go do something, let's take all the great stuff that Ethereum brought, the smart contracts, the programmable finance. Let's go take all the great things that Bitcoin brought, that email for money, the ability to teleport value instantaneously anywhere in the world with no counterparty risk. But let's make it scale so you get to millions of users and eventually billions of users. Let's make it talk to everything so it's interoperable, so we have that Wi-Fi moment. And then let's also put a governance system so we can figure out how to evolve the system. So we can figure out how to manage the system, the who pays and who decides side of things. Mm-hmm. And we said, let's do it with principles. So we said, first, before we do anything at all, let's go get a bunch of academics. Let's write a lot of papers. Let's get the universities involved and really figure out fact from fiction, do the science part. So we fixed a lot of broken windows along the way. And then let's build it with very rigorous code, the same type of software engineering that they do for building rockets and flying planes and breaking software for trains, where the failure of the system means that people die. Let's have that same level of engineering rigor in implementing the protocol. So we've been at it for 6 years. We launched the mainnet back in 2017. We did the largest upgrade in our history last year with the Shelley upgrade. And now we're actually one of the most decentralized cryptocurrencies around, with 1,800 stake pools, making us over 100 times more decentralized than Bitcoin. We're dramatically faster. We're 4 million times more energy efficient. And we just keep upgrading the system. We're almost at 1 million users. It's pretty amazing to see how fast we've grown and how much we've achieved.
Let's go back to the differences between Cardano and Ethereum. I think you have already answered my question. What are the differences? Let's say it this way. Do you think the market always decides, right? The market will evolve and is going to get more educated, I think, in the future, and I think the market will decide. Do you think Cardano will replace Ethereum in any point in time in the future? And also, what are your thoughts about Ethereum 2.0 compared to Cardano?
That's a good question too. The markets are inevitably going to decide. We focus on different demographics. There's a big emphasis in the Cardano project for the developing world. We care a lot about economic identity, and we say, how do we do remittances and microfinance and insurance? So we have offices in Africa, Eastern Europe, Mongolia, and we work a lot with some of the poorest people in the world, and we work a lot with governments. And whereas Ethereum is a little bit more in Europe, a little bit more in North America, and they focus a lot on traditional finance and a lot on disrupting the Fortune 500. So we're kind of focusing on slightly different customer bases in a certain respect. But that said, I think that there's definitely room in the marketplace for several strong protocols. For example, we have Google and Apple and Microsoft, and they all get, they're all huge companies. I think it's entirely possible that Ethereum and Cardano and Polkadot and others can coexist with each other and service a large application ecosystem, because this is ultimately a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Now, your specific question about F2, this is an example of trying to change the wheels on a car while it's still driving. It's very difficult to upgrade a cryptocurrency, and we spent 6 years, including with a project with the European Union and IBM Research, trying to figure out how to do that well. So it's very, very difficult to do what Vitalik is trying to do with F2, and we wish them well, and they've made enormous progress towards it. And there's a lot of good stuff in that design. It's very risky from a technological viewpoint, but it has a huge payoff if they can get to the next level, because it's going to give them a lot more scalability, and it's going to be a little easier to work with Ethereum, which is good for us because we're moving to an interoperable world. The problem, though, is they still haven't really made any explicit governance decisions. So how do you upgrade the system? Is there a treasury built into the system where the cryptocurrency can pay for its own bills? None of those things are there. So it's kind of like having this amazing machine but no government. And that's a slight problem. And we see with Bitcoin what happens with that. Eventually you get to a point where you can't really grow beyond a certain threshold, and you can't evolve the system beyond a threshold. Like everybody in Bitcoin says, we really should have smart contracts. We really should have side chains. We really should have all these things. But it's not clear how you coordinate the community to upgrade the system to get there. And Ethereum is going to eventually start suffering from that same problem if they don't explicitly take provisions for it. We have, as has Tezos and some others in the third generation cryptocurrency space. So we think that's long-term going to be a big competitive advantage that we tend to have. But I think we can coexist, and we certainly are, and we keep getting along, and we learn from them, and they learn from us.
Excellent. The following topic, I think, is a very important one that I don't see a lot of people creating awareness in the market, especially with all the new people jumping into the market. Let's talk about time and decentralization, because I have heard you saying that maybe one of the most common criticisms that you receive is the fact that it takes a little bit longer time for Cardano to develop in many different ways. But I think it's very important what you explained in other videos about time and decentralization. Even there is no protocol that goes from centralized to decentralized in a very short period of time. Also, to Bitcoin, it took it a long time to do so. So, can you explain why is it taking this time for Cardano to develop in many different ways, and the importance of time and decentralization?
Well, in some ways we're faster than some of the incumbents. For example, we were first to market with proof of stake. Ethereum is still trying to get there, and we're already there. And the system is nearly completely decentralized. And it's going to take them probably another year to 2 years to roll out their protocol. And they were working on their proof of stake protocol longer than us. In fact, we spent about 6 years working on it. They spent 7 years working on Casper, having a lot of setbacks and a lot of things along the way. So even though you seem to be moving faster in the beginning, when you follow a move fast and break things principle, when you're doing protocol design, having a very systematic methodology is a very powerful thing because you never regress. So even if it takes you a little longer to get the papers out, you don't have to redo everything every time you publish a new result. And Casper was kind of in design hell for several years as a result. So that's one dimension of it. The other dimension is, are we in a situation where network effect has set in or not? And so some people are, Ethereum's network effect is so strong. But I'm old enough to remember MySpace. I'm old enough to remember Yahoo. I'm old enough to remember a lot of these so-called monopolies that had the network effect, and they're gone. They don't really have any prominence anymore. So technology changes very, very quickly. And, we look at DeFi right now. To me, DeFi looks like the infrastructure coins like Bitcoin and Cardano and Ethereum in 2017, where they're in an unsustainable price level. So there's a lot more holding up Bitcoin today than there was in 2017. There's a lot more holding up Ethereum and Cardano today than there was in 2017. But there's not much holding up SushiSwap and all these other things. They're kind of like, hey, these sexy things that people get very excited about, but they're probably going to burn out in 6 months to a year and see a 90% reduction in their market capitalization. So what does that mean? It means a lot of the DeFi will go into DeFi winter. And that means new platforms will come for the next wave of DeFi. And that's where we'll see heavy competition from Tezos and Polkadot, Algorand, Cardano, and these other upstarts, and Eth2, actually. The other thing, a lot of dApps are becoming multi-chain. So they're not betting on one infrastructure, they're load balancing and saying we can run on multiple infrastructures and we reduce by cost. And we have a huge transaction fee advantage over Ethereum. It costs millions of dollars to do things on their system, whereas us, it's hundreds of dollars, and it'll get cheaper over time because of the bets that we've made. So I don't think the market, developers, the consumers, given how new everything is to everybody, have really set standards like Google is a standard, or Android is a standard, or iPhones are standard. I don't think that's occurred yet. And if tech's any indication, things change very, very quickly. So I think that it's going to be really fun competing this year, next year, and the coming years. The other thing to point out is there are only 80,000 Solidity developers compared to 22.6 million regular developers. So the vast majority of developers, they write Java code, C# code, JavaScript code. They don't write Solidity. And so as a consequence, whoever can bring those developers first into their ecosystem and legacy infrastructure into the ecosystem, who has the best strategy there, has the best chance of bringing billions of people into crypto, not just hundreds of thousands or millions of beta testers into crypto. So it's all about your acquisition strategy for customers, the markets you play in, the technology stacks that you bet on. And we feel pretty confident because we have a path to those mainstream languages. We're interoperable with Ethereum. So if you have Ethereum code, it's going to run on our system. And then we have some special purpose stuff like Plutus and Marlow for high assurance applications, which can bring the Fortune 500 governments in because they have applications that can't fail. Because if they fail, millions of dollars are lost or people die, or privacy is compromised and laws are violated and so forth. And there's not many people out there that have such a holistic strategy for platform growth as us, alongside the governance and all the other such things. But what's really cool is that we are seeing enterprise adoption speeding up, and we're seeing government adoption. Like, for example, governments are thinking about taking cryptocurrencies for their Federal Reserve Bank and the central banks. And then you see Fortune 500s like Tesla, for example, actually buying Bitcoin. So Oracle will probably do it, and Apple will probably do it. So it's creating a lot more stability in our markets. But they're certainly not buying DeFi at the moment. They're just in the infrastructure coins. They're just buying the layer one stuff. And it's going to be a little while before we get to DeFi being stable.
Interesting. Okay, the following question is also from the audience, and it's very simple, but we want to know, what does the future of Cardano look like, let's say, between 3 and 5 years? How do you picture it?
Well, my primary goal is at least one country is running Cardano as its backend. So we didn't build Cardano just to be a transaction system or smart contract system. We built to be a financial operating system that can also run social services. So you can do property registration, you can do voting, you can do compliance, you can do stock markets, you can do payment systems, you can do taxation, you can do all kinds of cool things with the infrastructure we built for Cardano. And we have these great relationships like in the country of Georgia and the country of Ethiopia, where we're bringing millions of people from those countries online. So I'd love to see a national ID system run on Cardano. I'd like to see national elections run on Cardano. I'd like to see agricultural supply chains and food safety and medical safety run on Cardano. I'd like to see the brokering of medical records done on Cardano, these types of things. And what's nice is it'll be done at an incredibly low cost. It's global, super fast, fraud-free, transparent, auditable, and basically transnational. So those standards in Georgia will work with the Ethiopian standards, and suddenly they can trade with each other and work with each other, get economic identity. So that's one big dimension. The other thing, I'd like to see a lot of adoption amongst SMEs. I'd like to see at least 1,000 of small to medium-sized enterprises running some of their infrastructure on our infrastructure. And I'd love to see at least 10 or 15 of the Fortune 500 doing something good with Cardano. And personally, I'd love to see over 100 million users in our ecosystem. We're about at 1 million, give or take, depending on how you count them. And we're growing very rapidly. And so over a 3 to 5 year period, that hockey stick is quite easy to do as we start bringing these government deals in that bring millions of users with them. I'd love to see a lot more penetration as well in Latin America and South America. We have an office in Buenos Aires and people in Costa Rica and other places. And you know, there's a lot of things I think we can do for stable coins, CBDCs, especially for non-BIS members, so central bank issued digital currencies to compete with normal currencies, and remittance and peer-to-peer lending and so forth. You know, just America alone is like one of the largest remittance cultures where we send money to Mexico, send money to other places. It makes a lot of sense to see what we can do there to get big gains. Like it shouldn't cost $10 to send $100. That should be near free. And you shouldn't pay a 15, 20, 30, 40% interest rate on a loan, especially if it's a small loan. And I'd love to see in the next 3 to 5 years that we gain some inroads there. And those applications are universal. So they'll work just as well in Ethiopia as they do Mexico, as they do in Argentina. And reputation and credit markets can form, and they won't require any central coordinator. So these are my aspirations, and we're very well capitalized. The ecosystem is growing at a very good rate. So I think we'll at least get a shot at trying it. We'll see what happens over the next 5 years.
Excellent. Mr. Hoskinson, the following question is a little bit tricky. I don't know if you really said this. Someone sent me a title, the title of a news, a piece of news. I don't know if you really said this, but is it true that you said that Bitcoin will die the minute Cardano surpasses it? I think, I don't know if it was in...
Yeah, the exact quote there was that I feel that Bitcoin's valuable because it's valuable, and if they don't upgrade and they don't become competitive, then if an altcoin like Ethereum or Cardano or whatever surpasses Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to have a hell of a time reclaiming its throne. Because, you know, the whole reason people buy Bitcoin is it's the big coin. You know, it's the entry point. It's the most accepted. It's the most valuable. It has the biggest infrastructure behind it. But if Bitcoin starts losing value, it gets less miners. The security level goes down. The adoption levels go down, and it dies out. So the Bitcoin has to really make some decisions about what the goalposts are and where it wants to go as an ecosystem. And right now, it's coasting on the fact that it's the most valuable. It's not providing anything else. It's incredibly slow. It takes 10 minutes for a transaction to settle. You have to wait at least an hour for a transaction to get enough confirmations that you have high certainty. My system, it's seconds. And we have the same level of security.
Are you saying this because you don't see enough action in terms of development and developers upgrading the system or improving it?
In every context, 7 transactions per second, hour-long settlement times, high transaction fees, no smart contracts, no interoperability, limited programmability, no real good standards for metadata, no ability to comply with regulation built into the chain, no governance system. I mean, you just keep going down the list. And that's not a criticism of Bitcoin in that oh, they're somehow super far behind. They're the oldest cryptocurrency. They were the first mover. Its biggest problem is its inability to coordinate upgrades. It's okay to move slowly, but you have to at least show that there's a roadmap and there's a path to make things better. The problem is it's not clear to me if they'll ever get any major innovations in. And no matter where your philosophy sits, let's say you love privacy. There's better private coins like Zcash and Monero. Let's say you really love interoperability and scalability. There's other protocols for that. But Bitcoin doesn't give anything in a category.
I think it's a topic for a debate, but let's leave it here and let's move into the following question, which is following two questions we can answer rapidly or yeah.
Sure.
Are we going to be able to buy data in more exchanges anytime soon?
Yeah, there's over 30 exchanges that have listed ADA, and there's more coming. The foundation does all that work primarily. And we're starting to get to a point where tier one exchanges are listing ADA and they're taking it seriously. And liquidity comes with price. So the more valuable the asset, the temptation to list it increases because those trading fees are quite lucrative. So we've gone from 3 billion to 30 billion. So I imagine that tier one exchanges are now going to take it more seriously. But we're on all the major suspects like Kraken, Bitfinex, Binance, Bittrex, and these types of things. So there's reasonable liquidity. Just certain areas are frustrating, like U.S. liquidity, especially state of New York and so forth. And that would require like a Gemini or a Coinbase. And who knows? I think they have some plans in the future, but we'll just see what they do. We don't control that; they do, and they never tell us anything. Even if they do, that it'd never be accurate anyway.
Okay, got it. And the last question is also from the audience. I already know the answer, but I really like the way you answer the question. Do you have any price predictions for ADA for 2021?
Yeah, I always say if I knew the price, I'd be a trader, not an engineer. I have a lot of friends who have hedge funds, and they have large Picasso collections. I don't. I have ponchos.
Okay, you have ponchos.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, you need to have a couple ponchos from Argentina. We should send you.
Oh, there we go.
Have you ever been here?
Oh, many times, many times. Okay, yeah, I love Patagonia, and it's a lot of fun. I love the food. I gain like 5-6 pounds every time I come on down because I eat so much steak and bread.
That's okay. That's okay. You only live once. Well, Mr. Hoskinson, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Maybe we can have you again later in 2021 to talk about the progress that you have done in that period of time. And muchas gracias. We thank you once again for being here.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.